For decades, André Rieu looked untouchable. The smiling violinist who could turn a public square into a ballroom seemed powered by something stronger than age, stronger than exhaustion, stronger even than criticism. But recently, something shifted. Cancelled concerts, visible strain, and a quiet transfer of control inside his empire have left fans asking a question no one ever wanted to ask about André Rieu: the collapse. No one expected. In March 2024, André Rieu stepped into Mexico City with the same confidence that had carried him through decades of sold-out arenas. At 74, he was still maintaining a schedule that would exhaust performers half his age, close to 100 concerts a year, constant flights, rehearsals, press obligations, and the relentless demand to be on every single night. For André, the stage was not optional. It was oxygen. But Mexico City, rising more than 2,000 meters above sea level, introduced a variable he could not charm away with a smile or outplay with a waltz. The first concerts went ahead, but something was wrong. The altitude pressed heavily on the entire orchestra. Some musicians suffered nosebleeds. Others complained of headaches and unusual fatigue. André himself had arrived already battling a flu, brushing it aside the way he had brushed aside illness many times before. In 2010, a viral infection in his inner ear had thrown off his balance and forced him off the road for months. In 2019, he performed through high fever without letting audiences see the strain. Pushing through had become part of his identity. This time, pushing through backfired. After only 2 performances, his body gave out. He became dizzy, feverish, disoriented. He later admitted he felt suddenly old, not theatrically old, but frighteningly fragile. The man who built an empire on stamina and showmanship found himself unable to stand with certainty. The remaining concerts were canceled. Around 40,000 ticket holders were left disappointed, some having traveled long distances to see him. For an artist who prided himself on never letting fans down, the cancellations felt like a personal failure rather than a medical necessity. Backstage, the reality sank in. André called his wife, Marjorie, the woman he credits with saving him emotionally decades earlier, and said words he had never allowed himself to say. He did not want another first concert day like this. That confession carried weight. This was the same man who joked publicly about performing until he was 140. The humor had always masked a deeper truth. He never intended to stop, but now, for the first time, the possibility of stopping had entered the conversation. When he returned home to Maastricht, the shift was subtle but unmistakable. His son Pierre, already responsible for much of the production and business structure behind Rieu Productions, stepped further into protective mode. Tour planning changed. Long-haul international runs were reconsidered. The focus began tilting toward Europe. Fewer brutal back-to-back arena sequences. More controlled pacing. No dramatic retirement announcement. No farewell press conference. Just quiet restructuring. Those close to him understood immediately. This was not surrender. It was preservation. Yet for fans who had grown accustomed to André's almost mythic resilience, the message was clear. Even the king of the waltz has limits. And for the first time in decades, André Rieu was listening to his body instead of overriding it. The trauma behind the smile. To understand why André Rieu's recent health scare feels heavier than a routine cancellation, you have to look far beyond the stage lights. You have to look at the boy, born in Maastricht in October 1949, inside a strict Roman Catholic household, where music filled the rooms, but warmth often did not. His father, André Rieu Sr., was the conductor of the local symphony orchestra, a respected and disciplined man. His mother, Alice, maintained order with precision. There were 6 children in the house, 3 boys and 3 girls, and expectations were clear. Perform well, behave properly, and do not question authority. Affection was not the language of that home. Friends were rarely invited inside. Laughter was not the defining sound. Achievement mattered more than comfort. André has openly said that he once believed he was a happy child at birth, but something shifted as he grew older. In interviews, he has described feeling unseen and unloved, words he does not use lightly. Those statements came only after years of reflection, and more importantly, after 4 years of therapy that forced him to confront what he calls a deeply rooted childhood trauma. When he appeared on a Dutch television special and spoke candidly about his upbringing, viewers were stunned. The man known globally for joy and romance described a loveless environment. His brother Robert supported that version publicly, explaining that attention and emotional safety were missing. For both brothers, childhood felt like a test they were constantly failing, no matter how well they performed musically. The emotional rupture became permanent when André was 24. He brought his future wife, Marjorie, home to meet his parents. It should have been a milestone moment. Instead, it became the end. Marjorie was asked to leave. André was instructed to return to his tidy bedroom, as if he were still a child. In that instant, he made a decision that changed his life. He chose her. According to his own account and his brother's, that choice cost him his place within the family. From that moment forward, he could do nothing right in his parents' eyes. His father died in 1992, never having attended a single one of André's concerts. Not even when stadiums filled and albums sold in the millions. His mother lived to 98, but reconciliation never truly came. André has admitted that he did not attend his father's funeral, a confession that reveals how deep the fracture ran. This history reframes everything about the man on stage. When he says he wants audiences to leave with a smile, it is not marketing. It is personal. He has often explained that the love he lacked as a child became the love he tried to transmit through his violin. He is not just conducting waltzes. He is rewriting his past every night, proving that joy can exist where it once did not. Now, as age and illness begin to intrude, the fear beneath the surface becomes clearer. If performing was the way he healed himself, what happens when performing slows down? For André Rieu, the stage has never just been a career. It has been the antidote to a childhood he spent years trying to understand. The empire that almost collapsed. Long before altitude and exhaustion in Mexico forced André Rieu to slow down, he had already faced a crisis that nearly erased everything he built. His journey did not begin with stadiums and private jets. It began in conservatories in Liège, Maastricht, and later Brussels, where he studied under respected teachers and earned the Premier Prix. He had the credentials to fit comfortably inside the classical establishment. Instead, he felt suffocated by it. For several years, he played within traditional orchestras, including the Limburg Symphony Orchestra conducted by his own father. The experience sharpened his technique, but deepened his frustration. He saw audiences sitting stiffly, musicians performing mechanically, and a widening gap between classical music and ordinary people. In 1978, with little money and even less certainty, he founded the Maastricht Salon Orchestra with only 5 to 7 musicians. They performed waltzes and light classical pieces in small venues, far from glamorous stages. Critics dismissed the concept as outdated. Financially, it was unstable. The real turning point came when he made an even bigger leap, creating the Johann Strauss Orchestra. This was not a modest adjustment. It was a declaration. He wanted gowns instead of black suits, movement instead of rigid posture, humor instead of solemn silence. Purists saw it as theatrical excess. He saw it as survival for a genre losing its audience. Then came the moment that changed everything, performing Shostakovich's Second Waltz during a Champions League halftime event. In front of tens of thousands of football fans and millions watching at home, classical music met mainstream culture in a way few had attempted. The reaction was electric. Within weeks, album sales surged. Strauss & Co. dominated charts. Classical music, in his hands, became commercially competitive with pop. Success expanded rapidly. He eventually sold more than 40 million albums worldwide and accumulated over 500 platinum awards and hundreds of gold discs. His tours ranked among the most profitable globally, with one year generating around $96 million. He established Rieu Productions in Maastricht, building a network of 13 companies employing more than 100 staff. He invested millions into his own recording studio and even maintained private aircraft to transport musicians efficiently. His orchestra operated without government subsidies, sustained entirely by ticket sales and recordings. But the most ambitious project nearly destroyed him. Determined to recreate the grandeur of Vienna, he commissioned a full-scale replica of Schönbrunn Palace as a traveling stage set. The construction was extravagant and logistically complex. Transporting it across continents required enormous crews and resources. When ticket sales in certain markets did not meet expectations, financial pressure mounted rapidly. Debts escalated. The media speculated about bankruptcy. For the first time, the empire looked unstable. At one point, even his cherished Stradivarius violin appeared financially vulnerable. The emotional weight of that possibility shook him deeply. He managed to stabilize the business, restructure obligations, and continue touring. But he did not forget the lesson. Quietly, he began investing heavily in real estate across the Netherlands, acquiring close to 80 properties as a safeguard. The flamboyant showman had become a cautious strategist. Behind the glittering stages and flowing gowns stood a man who understood how quickly applause can turn into anxiety. The financial collapse he narrowly avoided taught him that success is not permanent and security is never guaranteed. That history explains why the Mexico collapse felt so ominous. It was not just a health scare. It was a reminder that even carefully built empires, whether financial or physical, can falter. And André Rieu has lived long enough to know how fragile even the strongest foundations can be. Loss inside the orchestra. In December 2016, the atmosphere inside André Rieu's touring world changed overnight. The Johann Strauss Orchestra was in the middle of a demanding UK arena run when longtime trombonist Ruud Merckx suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. He was only 47 years old. For more than 2 decades, Ruud had stood among the brass section, part of the sound that helped define Rieu's global success. His wife, violinist Alina Lin Jong, performed just meters away from him on stage as a fellow member of the orchestra. What began as a routine tour stop quickly turned into a medical emergency no one had prepared for. The news spread rapidly through the company. Rehearsals stopped. Schedules froze. Performers who had just been focused on lighting cues and set lists were suddenly confronting the unthinkable. Ruud remained unresponsive, and the emotional shock rippled through the ensemble. André did not attempt to minimize the moment. He postponed multiple UK performances, including major arena dates in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Nottingham, and Glasgow. Tickets were honored for rescheduled shows months later, but the mood had changed permanently. In a public statement, André described it as a terrible week for everyone involved. He thanked fans for their support, emphasizing how deeply the orchestra felt the loss. Those words were not corporate courtesy. Many musicians in the Johann Strauss Orchestra have been with him for decades. They tour together constantly, celebrate birthdays together, raise children while moving across continents. It is less a temporary contract and more a traveling household. When one member suffers, the entire structure feels it. Ruud's cardiac arrest forced André to confront mortality within his own ranks. The orchestra, often perceived by audiences as a polished, joyful machine, revealed its fragility. There was no spotlight to soften this reality. The showman who encourages audiences to clap and dance had to face silence and uncertainty among his own musicians. And this was not the only challenge. Around the same period, André faced a legal dispute tied to a summer concert in Maastricht involving young guest performers. Authorities issued a substantial fine, claiming violations of working hour regulations for minors. The accusation cast an unexpected shadow over a hometown event that usually symbolizes celebration. Although the case was later dismissed in court and the fine overturned, the public scrutiny added strain during an already emotionally difficult time. Even acts of generosity have followed him into headlines. He quietly replaced instruments for a group of disabled musicians after their equipment was stolen. He offered material support following the fire at Notre Dame Cathedral. Yet no amount of goodwill shields an organization from loss. The Johann Strauss Orchestra has survived criticism, financial risk, and tragedy. But each event chips away at the illusion that success guarantees stability. And when André himself begins to show visible physical limits, the question becomes unavoidable. How resilient can the structure remain if the man at its center can no longer carry the same weight? Love, legacy, and an uncertain future. If there is one constant in André Rieu's life, it is Marjorie. He met her as a child and reunited with her in early adulthood. He has often said her love transformed him completely. Without her, he believes he might have fallen apart. Their marriage approaches its golden anniversary, built not on possession, but on freedom. He credits therapy for helping him break patterns from his own upbringing. He raised his sons differently. Pierre now runs the production company from Maastricht, steering logistics while protecting his father from overexertion. Their bond is strong, even playful, but recently it has taken on a more serious tone. Pierre is no longer just managing concerts. He is managing time. André insists he still feels 25 in his mind. He continues touring the UK and Europe, and his birthday celebration project, The Dream Continues, suggests defiance rather than surrender. Yet the reduction in long-distance tours tells another story. The schedule is changing. The distances are shrinking. For fans who have traveled from over 100 countries to stand in Vrytov Square during summer concerts, the thought of a final bow is unthinkable. But age is not a critic you can silence. André Rieu built a career on the belief that music has no barriers. Now he faces the only barrier no artist can outplay. He has not announced retirement. He still smiles on stage, but for the first time, the future feels finite. Do you think André Rieu should slow down and protect his health or keep performing as long as he can? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you've ever attended one of his concerts, tell us where you saw him perform.